Hello and welcome to Roadmap 2019, our platform where we engage with major stakeholders in Nigeria's journey to the general elections. I am Ladi Akeredoluwale. Thanks for joining us. My guest on today's edition is deeply worried that many of Nigeria's historical fault lines are only becoming wider. My guest also says peace is essential for any positive development to take place in Nigerian society. Now, please join us as we talk to the Secretary of the National Peace Committee and Catholic Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, Dr. Matthew Kukah. Lord Bishop, thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us. Welcome to Roadmap 2019.
Thank you very much.
Now, let me start with the most current thing that you are involved in, given our current political dispensation, and that is the National Peace Committee. When that committee concluded the work of 2015, I'm sure quite a number of the members, and they did say so, including yourself, thought, okay, fine, we've done this. Our work should be done by now. We should all just go back because we're all very busy anyway. But here we are in 2018, 2019. The Peace Committee is not only still very much alive, its work is said to be even more needed now than before. So what do you think that says about how far we have come? If elders like yourselves, the former head of state, Cardinal Onayekon, and a number of others like that, still have to step in almost like arbiters for the democratic process?
Well, it also makes you appreciate that democracy is a work in progress and nation building, and we're relatively very young in this process. And I think that we've sometimes been a bit unfair to ourselves because designing the template, designing building blocks, managing an environment of this nature, states not coming out of the reality of people's existence, has also brought to the fore the difficulties of building democracy. And all you have to do is to look at the United States of America, look at other parts of Europe. Our journey has been severely slowed, by the successive years consumed by the locusts, and in this particular case, the military. And I'm not talking here of military in any disparaging sense. It's that they were by no stretch of the imagination agents of democracy. And it's a measure of how far we have traveled but gone nowhere, that even after over 20 years of our so-called return to democracy in 1999, we're still in the hands of a retired general. And we've only had briefly Jonathan and Yaradua, who never really finished their term. So if you divide the period of time we've had with the one that has been taken over by the General Obasanjo and now General Buhari, then you can understand, that this journey has been severely slowed. So yes, we thought that we'll finish our work with the Peace Committee and go home, but we discovered that the baby has, whether it's jaundice or whatever, but requires more medical attention. And for us, we're just like midwives. So it turns out the midwife can't go. But we're also hoping that we can continue to nudge and encourage our people so that this system is supported by infrastructure and institutions, that can make this process something that will just become a routine process.
Now, you mentioned institutions, and one of the things that people keep talking about when we mention democracy is the building of institutions. Now, if an institution, if I may call it that, like the Peace Committee, is still in place and has to act as an arbiter, you've met with INEC, you've now met with the political parties, does that mean our institutions are not strong yet?
As well, our institutions, and almost each and every one of them, exist nominally. Please don't forget, you have to look back and ask how many parties General Buhari had to hop through to get to power. We have such a volatile political system that there's no party today that has a history of any serious antecedents. It's just we're lucky, hopefully, that the military has gone. But if you recall, Every time the military came and decided they wanted to go, new parties were invented. We have really not had anything that grew out of the exigencies of the moment, taking into consideration our culture, taking into consideration the levels of our literacy or lack of, taking into consideration a range of factors. Every time we've had things cobbled up just to be able to serve as receptacles for receiving power. This is how APC came to be. This is how PDP came to be in 1999. So General Abdul Salam felt he needed to go after a few months, and there was the necessity to say, democracy is coming, let's get ready. So we have really not had political structures with any form of what you may call ideological commitment. We talk about like-minded people, but what you mean by like-minded people are just a bunch of people who simply come together so we can receive democracy. And the result is that we've always had more of the same, in part because many of the actors have always been people who were business partners of the old order. The military also are very careful, almost like the colonial state, and they weigh the consequences of handing over to this person or the other person. And a lot of that continue to haunt us up till today. So this is where we are. And I say very seriously that we are expecting too much of ourselves. The reason why our politics remains, for example, highly violent, and may remain so for a while until certain things fall into place, which is that the incentives cease to be what they are. You cannot say that you run the kind of system that we're running and getting into the Senate, for example, you expect it to be a walk in the park. I mean, the thought of collecting 30 million at the end of every month as just side money, not to talk of the kind of money people are making and you can make by what you call oversight. So, I mean, to enter the National Assembly is to enter paradise. So you cannot expect that people are just going to take it easy to go in and out of those places. To enter government house as a governor, to enter, these are not, so when we talk about democracy, we talk about politics and so on and so forth. I've seen people in Europe and America who've been in public life. They've come out, I was at the Kennedy School, and I saw people who went to Washington, to be the equivalent of ministers and so on. And they finished and they came back to the classroom. I saw people in Oxford. They finished, they come back, they're still riding bicycles like everybody else. So the incentives that we have in our structure are designed for the system to remain volatile and almost for the system to fail. So we're going to be on this road, and as I've often said, for a very long time, but hopefully, and this is one of the things we took away from INEC, and I think that they've done a pretty good job of trying to get the systems in place. And until we get to a point in which systems replace human manipulation and interventions, we can never be talking about free, fair, and credible elections in Nigeria.
Now, you mentioned INEC, which is one part. But some will argue that the more important part are the ones that you met after INEC, which is the political parties, the players, the people who are supposed to more or less operate this system. And our history in Nigeria will suggest that we are very good at designing systems. We are probably some of the best system designers around. But we are also, it would be said, some of the best design breakers around. With systems that other people use, that they work. Once we bring them here, somehow the Nigerian quote and unquote factor is brought in. Now, you met with the political parties, and when I say you met, I meant the National Peace Committee. There are 91 of them now. The last time you would have held this kind of meeting, they would have been a lot less in number. What did you take away from that meeting?
Well, you know what General Abdul Salam said, our chairman, when that issue came up, people said there are too many political parties. Nigerians say there are too many churches. They say there are too many mosques. But the truth of the matter is to look at that against the backdrop of what is happening in the country. Right now, the only way to survive and to remain relevant in Nigeria is to be connected with the state. The state is the only domain of privilege. And the way the politics is run in Nigeria, you really cannot go wrong. Because you set up shop, you get registered, it comes with consequences and benefits. You had the accusations and the allegations among the political parties themselves about other parties that are just set up by the bigger parties and so on. So either way, the fact is that you are not likely to end up poorer than you went in. I made the point that what we have in Nigeria will probably elsewhere not really pass muster as political parties in the real sense of the word, because we've been independent for how many years now, but we do not have any party in this country that has any shelf life, that stretches up to anything like 20 or so years. As I said, the circumstances that led to the formation of the PDP, for example, or the APC, in each and every one of these, we just hurriedly found building materials, wood is meeting with zinc, and so on and so forth. So a lot of these contraptions cannot bear the weight of the demands of democracy. And most of what you see as violence, about the primaries and all these, most of all this is evidence of the quality and caliber of structures themselves and the people who operate the structures. So if you ask me, the more the merrier. And I think that the system will somehow self-correct itself. And we take this, and I think somebody made a very good point. The smaller parties, many young people are finding their voices in the smaller parties. But people must also understand, you don't go into politics just hoping that you're going to contest and win elections and so on and so forth. There are many political parties that exist in other places, but of course that is because issues of bread and butter have been settled. And people are not in those parties because of anything. I mean, the Green Party, for example, is only the dynamism that it generated that led it into politics. Right. So this is where we are. But we can only pray that we have enough institutional mechanism to regulate who comes in and what qualification they have.